Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel and podcast. It's Mark and Chris back on a Monday night, 9:30, asking the same question we ask every Monday. What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. It's the boring international break. But don't worry, Mark and I have been using our time very, very carefully. We've been scouring the P. Diddy party list to find Mike Ashley and Derek Lambias, but we can't find them anywhere, Mark. We've tried very hard, haven't we? It's been a shocker.
We did look for Dennis Wise, but he's so small we couldn't see him.
He was just down the bottom. Just a little footnote on the list. Yeah. I did hear that Mike Ashley couldn't get at the party because he wouldn't wear a tie, so they told him to fuck right off, to be fair. But anyway, we started early. But yeah, we're back with what's going on, guys. Even though it's a national break, Newcastle don't come back to the weekend. But we have got a few things to talk about as well. And we're trying something a little bit different tonight. We're throwing it open for you guys. You've fired a few questions into us to start some topical conversation going, which we love to do. So just before we get stuck into that, if this is the kind of thing that you do like, smash subscribe, come help us get to 9,000 subscriber mark. You could win this lovely blue retro Isak shirt, not the actual one I'm wearing, even though I do smell quite good and wear a nice aftershave. It will be a separate one that's never been worn before. You could win that once we get to 9K, enter the prize, and you could win that prize. And like the video, recommend it to family and friends. They won't regret it. It's great Newcastle United content. We're live tonight, as always. Jump in the chat, as loads of you are already in the chat, and it helps the episode flow, and we love interacting with you guys. So we are starting with one topic, Mark. I think the main topic, really, I think, to start with before we throw it open to the guys to give us some ideas. And it's all about Anthony Gordon, isn't it? So this story broke about Anthony Gordon signing a new deal potentially with the club, being the highest paid player at the club as well. You know, this to me is absolutely brilliant because all that uncertainty in the summer about his head being turned by Liverpool, you know, obviously didn't get any game time really with England. You know, he came back, he looked moody, looked a little bit out of sorts. He answered it superbly, in my opinion, when he said he never wanted to leave. He's never thought about leaving. And then slowly but surely, then performances started to get back into the Anthony Gordon that we all know and love. That intensity was back from the press. He's getting the goals. He was playing in, again, that weird, unfamiliar position because both of our strikers are made of glass and they were injured yet again. But it's good to see Anthony back. And for you, Mark, is he worth it? Is he value for being the highest paid player in the club right now?
Probably. I mean, the potential's there, isn't it? The fact that he started off so well last season, the goals, the assists. I think the ceiling is exceptionally high, and look, if he's one of those players that you now build around, as with others, it has to be the case. And even if there was an option for somebody to go and buy him, it's going to be a huge amount of money now that it would take to get him out of the club before Newcastle would even consider selling him. So I think it's an eyebrow raiser in terms of him being the highest paid player at the club, but I'm not surprised at the same time because I think the absolute potential there for him is absolutely massive. So yeah, I'm not completely surprised by the amount of of money that they've thrown at him for this. I mean, what is it, doubling his salary effectively to keep it in sort of 6 years as well. So it's a huge amount of a commitment there.
Yeah, I mean, contracts aren't really worth the paper they're printing on in terms of the longevity of the contract. I mean, Andy Carroll was a prime example. He signed that 5-year contract, and was it a month later we sold him Liverpool? But we're a different Newcastle now than we were then, so I don't think we will do that. I don't think we will cash in on Anthony Gordon. If we do, it'll be top brass. But yeah, for me, Mark, I think you've got to tie down those players. We've talked about this for ages. You know, Bruno, Isak, and Gordon are the three kind of dynamic elite players in that lineup. You know, you could throw Pope in just for his kind of importance to the team, and then probably Botman when he's back fit. You know, that spine of the team. But you know, Pope has his moments, doesn't he? He has those ricks in him. He has those kind of flappy moments. We've talked about upgrading the goalkeeper. Anthony Gordon, Bruno Guimaraes, and Alexander Isak are not players that we're going to upgrade on because we haven't got 600 million quid to spend on three players that are better than them, probably. So for me, you've got to tie them down. You've got to tie them down on contracts that probably reflect their talent. I mean, this is a deeper line thing for the club because for me, you have to have European football for these lads to want to stay next season. So you can tie them down on contracts as long as you want. But if you don't get European football at the end of the season and somebody comes in offering them that that nugget, then that could be an issue. Just a quick comment there from Trevor. He just said, even though coming from the detox facility as he tries to get off fentanyl, been looking forward to this one. Take my mind off things. More thankful for the distraction than you can imagine. Cheers. Well, our thoughts about you, Trevor. Thank you so much for tuning in, mate, and I hope we can make that a bit easier for you to get through a difficult time, Bonnie lad. So thank you very much for jumping in the comments tonight and spending your time listening to me and him talk about football. And everybody else in chat as well, mate. So, yeah, get well soon, Bonnie lad. Him, get well soon. I was talking about the podcast, mate. I wasn't talking about you. The podcast.
Yeah. No, I echo that. Keep up the good work there, mate. Absolutely.
Yeah, top man, Trevor. Yeah, but going back to the Gordon thing, Mark, it's just inevitable. I think Isak will be the next one that they pin down. I mean, I think the only thing about Isak, not a kind of sidetracker from Gordon, the only thing about Isak that worries me are these little niggly injuries that he keeps getting. I mean, there's no doubting that when he's fit, he's brilliant. To me, he's the second best striker in the Premier League next to Haaland, which is a hell of an achievement because he is unbelievable. He's inhuman, is Haaland. But, these little niggly injuries with Isak, how do we get away from this? How do we stop this happening? Because it just seems to happen time and time again. And I don't know how the club fix it, mate. Is this what Bunce was not brought in for? Why is this not improving?
I mean, the whole thing with I guess with Bunce coming in, that's going to take time, and it's going to take a change in philosophy, I guess. Yeah, well, it's my heated era, so I'm keeping warm while drying some clothing. So he's
just gonna scare the shit out of kids in the street. And he just jumps out.
If it moves, I'm out of here.
That'd be a great podcast. We'd go down a different avenue there, couldn't we? Most haunted, ever most haunted. What it could be, mate.
So. Terrifying of that, yeah. What was I saying again? You've completely thrown it again. Totally got
as always, mate.
Where was I going?
I think you're talking about Isak and the injuries and the Bunce. Yeah. The Bunce I think you're on there.
I think that takes time. I think that's not going to be an overnight fix. I think we've sort of seen a change in the way that things are maybe done, and a change in the way that Eddie approaches game. And I think it's essentially for Isak, it has to come down to there has to be competition for places, and there has to be somebody to take over from him and not running him into the ground as has happened. Because if he's the only fit striker and he's the only one available, then he's going to get left on the field. If Wilson or another like Osula or somebody is there to come in and take over 20, 30 minutes in a game, or come in and play games where Isak's not required, or if he's feeling a little bit off colour or slight niggle or something, he's not needed, then he needs the rest as well. So there's got to be a bit of that. We've talked about the players that are needed to come in, and that's one of the areas we definitely think has to be covered in that striking area. If Osula isn't ready, then somebody has to be in that position to come in and take over from Isak and give him some time off.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the Longstaff, a sensible Monica has just put in it. Tonali played the full 90 for Italy. So that's Longstaff starting on Saturday. I kind of hope not, but it's an interesting one because the stories are breaking about Longstaff are starting to do the rounds. And there's two ways to look at this. So apparently Eddie Howe wants to sort Longstaff's career. Sorry, I beg your pardon, his contract extension. So his career. His contract extension. Sorry, Sean. His contract extension now because the season was a valuable squad player. And I look at this two different ways. I mean, your first kind of gut reaction is, oh, fucking hell, there's better players than Longstaff, you need to tie it down. But if you look at it in isolation, football is a squad game, Mark. And we've talked about this before. And I think Sean's 26. He's an academy graduate. He's got plenty of games under his belt for Newcastle now. I think he's the kind of player that can come in the side and out the side without kicking up too much fuss. I think he would help new players settle in the club, in terms of understand the ethos of the club and the city and the supporters and all that other kind of stuff. And there's two ways to look at this for me. Is I've got no problem with Sean getting a new contract, no problem at all, right? Sean can be a really good squad player for Newcastle, but for me, he shouldn't be a starter. And that's what Sensible's saying there about Tonali. And for me, even if Miley comes back and starts doing what he did before he got injured. Sean is behind Tonali and Miley, in my opinion. You know, I know that might differ with some of the guys in the comments. Let us know what you guys think. Would you put Miley ahead of Longstaff in terms of what you've seen ability-wise? But when it comes to Sean, Mark, I know you're a fan of Sean. I'm a fan of Sean. I like, you know, the lad's attitude. He's a lovely kid. He's a great ambassador for the club. But, you know, he shouldn't really be in the starting 11, should he? Let's be honest.
No. I think that's not unfair. I think he's done a good. Fair. I think he's done a good job, but I think there are better players available than he is technically in that regard. Are the harder working players? Probably not. I think you know what you get with Sean. You get an absolute shift from him. He's not the most technically gifted players, and I think you need players like him in the squad, because you need probably players like him to come in when the chips are down and really put a shift in and get people sort of pumped up, and a bit like Dan Burn at the moment. But you also need players like that in the squad that have, you know, a sellable value. They have to. You can't let those players all end up out of contract. Yeah. Because if you lose the 4 or 5 that are out of contract at the end of this season, what the hell are you going to do?
Burn, Longstaff, isn't it? Who's the 4th? I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah, I do this all the time.
I can't remember off the top of my. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there were 4 or 5 that were due to come to the end of their contract this season, and you lose them all. You can't replace it, because you don't, unless Newcastle. Well, unless Newcastle are able to go and spend 400 million and buy in the first team players plus the squad depth, it's not going to happen. So by tying them down in the least just to have value in their contract, so you can sell them on if need be, then it's worth it. But I think he is, as limited as he is, he's a valuable member of the squad at the moment, particularly while there are injuries around. You know, if you know, God forbid, Joelinton gets another injury like he did last season, if Miley, you know, while he's still growing, picks up the knock or two, you need players like that in and around the squad. So it's sensible.
Yeah, you've got Longstaff, Callum Wilson, ironically enough, Fabian Schär, Dan Burn, and Jamal Lascelles is who you've got. He can't throw Kraft in there because he only got a 1-year extension, did he? It's an interesting comment actually from Trevor there as well. And I mean, I think at the time I said this as well. I think it was a big mistake to keep Longstaff and sell Anderson. Held on to Lobby way too long, and all because of the manager's sentiment. I mean, it's hard to disagree with that, Mark. I mean, I know we've talked about this. Would Sean have fetched you the same level of money as Elliot Anderson would have done? Probably not, in terms of, you know, the market right now. But, you know, players like Miguel Almirón and Sean Longstaff, I still wonder how hard the club actually tried to sell those players, and how much of that is down to the club and how much that is down to Eddie's sentimentality of those players, as Trevor says.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, what was the market for them? And I know we talked about that. There's the potential for teams like Leicester or somebody like that to have come in and maybe looked at Longstaff, but was there any market? Was what Newcastle really wanted for him achievable?
Would you think the value shown at? What would you think? 20 million? 15, 20 million?
I think for Newcastle, they probably would, but for an external, you know, for another club, they probably don't. They're probably looking between 10 and 15, because he is limited. He will work hard. If you get one of the smaller teams that comes up, he's probably a big fish in that side, and can really look quite good for them. But I don't think you were going to get the same kind of deal that you got for Anderson as you got for Sean Longstaff, because Anderson still has that ceiling.
It's that potential, isn't it? Yeah.
And Sean doesn't have. I mean, he's not that old, but he doesn't have that potential. He has a level which we've seen, and I don't think there's anything beyond that. And that's not to really slag him off, because I think he's done a wonderful job. But Elliot Anderson has such a higher ceiling to his game. I think we will, and we've seen flashes of it, and we've seen some of that at Forest since he's gone there. Is that there is the real potential that he can turn into a pretty decent player.
It'll be really interesting to see what happens when Miley's back. It's not too far away. I think he's even back in the next couple of weeks, I think, from what I gather. You know, I know he's back in training, but, you know, in terms of the first team squad, he may be back on the bench potentially certainly won't make it for Brighton, but he could potentially be there for an Arsenal game or something like that, possibly, or or Chelsea, who knows? But it'll be really interesting to see. As Trevor says again, you read my mind tonight, Trevor. It'll be nice to have young Louis Miley back. He looks like he's bulked up on his sick leave. He's got the potential to be as good as he wants to be. The sky's the limit. For me, sorry, Ian says he'd take 10 million in a pot noodle. I assume it's for Longstaff.
Is that for Sean? Yeah.
Yeah. What flavour pot noodle, Ian? That's
there we go. There's the question.
There's the question we really want to know. What flavour are you going for Sean Longstaff? But no, I think the Miley one is interesting. You know how much I rate the kid. And I think a lot of fans have completely disregarded what this kid did at 17 years old in arguably our most trying season we've had in 20 odd years. Champions League, Premier League, Cup games. This kid, controlled the game against Man United, Chelsea. He tackled Mbappe with ease away in Paris. And, this kid is absolutely brilliant. It's 17 years old, 18 years old he is now. And what we've seen, glimpses wise, I think this kid is, I agree with Trevor, I think the sky's the limit for him, Mark. And if he bulks up a bit, gets a bit more power to that frame, which he looks like he has done. I know people talk about his lack of pace, but people are obsessed with pace in the modern day game. It's an obsession. Pace, right? There's no point in being so quick if you can't use the ball and you've got a shit touch. Louis Miley has that thing that, it doesn't matter, how fast you run, you won't have it. He's got football intelligence, Mark, hasn't he? And I think people are totally underestimating that kid's brain and his vision and his quality on the ball. And I really hope for Louis' sake he comes back and he really fucking shows everybody what he's all about, mate.
I mean, there's a few players that you throw in and go, were these players quick? And I'm not likening them to them, but were Xavi and Iniesta blessed with massive amounts of pace?
Was Beckham quick?
Was Scholes?
No. Michael
do you know what I mean?
Wasn't quick.
So some of the greatest midfielders of our generation, of previous generations, were not quick, but they're quick up here.
Mm-hmm.
And
quick.
I think we've seen from Miley that he absolutely has the potential to play at the very highest level. He's done it. He's looked good against Paris Saint-Germain. He's looked good against the best in the Premier League, and nothing phases him. He is fearless in that regard. And I hope he comes back that way as well. But pace isn't the be all and end all, especially in that position. So long as he thinks quicker than everybody else, then he's already ahead of the game. If he's two or three steps ahead, Kevin De Bruyne is a good example as well.
Marcus is bang on, head on the swivel. That's exactly what De Bruyne's got. Sorry, just to jump in there. Head on the swivel is exactly what De Bruyne's got, Mark, as you're saying. And nobody talks about his lack of pace. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. And look, it's if you play the game 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, then you don't need a massive amount of pace. If your first touch can give you that 1 or 2 yards, 2 yards of space to be able to play in, or you don't need that first touch. If your first touch is playing the ball off, then that pace isn't really required. You just have to be in the right place at the right time. And if you're thinking ahead, that's it. And I think he's got the ability to do that.
I say when I think he's gotten them as well. We saw it. I always wonder if that screamer had gotten against Chelsea where he hit the bar in his very first game. I think he's got that from range, and none of our midfielders have that. Even Bruno, nobody shoots from range. Bruno tries this weird scoop chip shot like he's on the fucking 8th green or something looking for par, whereas I just want somebody to put their foot through the bastard. That was one thing that Shelby used to whine about, because the absolute thunder twat of a shot he had on him, and he never did nothing about it. He kept pissing around at the edge of the box. And I was like, for fuck's sake, John Joe, just hit it. And when he did hit it, it stayed hit. That's something that Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, and Scholes were brilliant at. And I really think, I'm not saying that Miley be as good as them. Fuck me, if he's half as good as them three, we're laughing. But I think he's got that in his locker. Interesting from Roger saying Miley is our number 6. Let me just take that second, Mark. I wouldn't play him there, Roger, because I think you'd lose a lot of his game. I think he's got that vision to find that through ball. And I'm not sure if he's sitting at number 6, he's too far away to find that pass. Mark, would you agree when Miley's on the pitch? Could you put him in there? Could you develop him into be that player?
I guess you could. I'm yet. I guess we're yet to see the real defensive side of his game, because he's played.
He started to show bits of it before he got injured. I remember tackle on Barkley for the Luton game and stuff like that. And
some of the, I think there was one was it in the West Ham game as well that where he does like to, he puts himself about. I mean, that's a good thing. Whether he's got the defensive discipline there, but he's young enough to learn that. But is that inbuilt in him? I think you're right. I think you potentially lose the ability, and I think this of Bruno as well, is if you play him as the deep lying of the three, you lose a lot of his ability in the final third because he's effective in and around the box. Look at those little through balls that he played last season. It's not to say that he couldn't do that role in the middle, but I just think you lose a little bit of him by just keeping him that far back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing him come back. I must admit, because I think he might just turn a couple of heads that have maybe forgot he was even there last season, which I think is a little bit disrespectful for how good the lad has been. But moving on to the next section, Mark, which is a new one for us. We thought we'd try a little something different. We've had a few questions come in from you guys, which is awesome, which is have your say. So we thought international break, not a lot of Newcastle action going. We were going to throw it open to you guys and have you fire in a few questions to us, maybe topic starters that we're going to start off talking about. And you guys can obviously jump in and give us your tuppence worth as well. So, Mark, you got the first one there you want to pull up?
I do.
It's from Bri. Go on, Mark. You can read it out.
So, Bri's message was just wondering what people's opinions might be on if Amanda Staveley gets some investment in Spurs and they lose faith in Ange. Would Staveley push for Eddie Howe down there?
Ooh, well, I'll go first on that one. I wouldn't put it past her. I think if she was involved in Spurs, which is what the stories go by. And listen, I've got no problem with it. Amanda Staveley's a businesswoman. She's just, I think we talked about this in a couple of shows back. She has no, divine kind of right or loyalty or honor to Newcastle United. She's not a Geordie, she didn't come through the fucking academy here. She's nothing like that. She helped the takeover go through as a businesswoman and a very successful businesswoman. And we thank her for what she did and what she did, in terms of bringing back the unity and the togetherness and the vibe that was there at the football club, largely perpetuated by Eddie Howe. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was an issue with Spurs and they maybe parted company with Ange, that Eddie might be high up on the list of agenda. But I suppose, Mark, it would all depend on just how hot the waters become on the River Tyne for Eddie, in terms of the new structure upstairs, really, isn't it, at that particular time?
It does. Would it surprise me if they would want him there? I think the love for Eddie from Amanda is definitely there, isn't it? She absolutely adores him, and I do think there will be interest there. But is it a case of they would move from? You don't know. I think they will more likely see Eddie Howe targeted for the England job, and I think there's probably definite interest there. But it genuinely it wouldn't surprise me because of the connection there is there for Howe and Staveley to if Spurs are wanting to move on and they're wanting some structure in place, and I think that he probably would do a sort of similar thing to the way that he handled things at Newcastle, come in and put a real emphasis in that hard work first before anything else, and perhaps it's say, but that actually might suit Spurs. Yeah,
I must admit, I'm laughing at Ty's comment there because I do agree. He says, "Lol, Daniel Levy playing games. Amanda's not going to get her hands on any shares in Spuds." Daniel Levy's the kind of guy, if you bought a bag of crisps off him, the fucker would cut the hole in the bottom and they'd all fall out on the floor. Probably you put your hand into an empty bag. So I totally agree with you on that, Ty. I think he's an absolute twat. Harry Kane must hate him for life for the whole Man City fiasco, because how many trophies would he have in his cabinet by now? Good gracious. But yeah, I agree. I think there is the affinity to Eddie, but it'll all depend on what this project is doing. And I suppose how much the shackles have been shaken off from the PSR, kind of APT fallout and everything else as well, Mark. So what was the next one that we had in there, mate, in terms of the questions? We've got some on the comments now as well coming in.
We do, yeah. So some of these are prepped in advance, but some of the ones coming in we're just starting to come to. So the next one was George. Can we pass judgment on Eddie Howe's progress as a manager, given that the squad has seemingly regressed and or stagnated over the last window? Additional, does he share responsibility for how they've regressed or how we've recruited? Or is he just playing the hand that he's been dealt? Could it be played any better under the circumstances?
Well, that's a big question, so I'll let you breathe and I'll answer first, then you can go next. I was going to read that there, but you were straight in there like a game show quiz host without the cheesy bow tie and teeth you can see in the dark. So yeah, in terms of that one, I think Eddie has to take some responsibility, George, in terms of the way that the players have regressed or the team has regressed in a way. He is the manager after all. He sets the cones up through the week. He sets the tactics. He sets the play. I don't know how much of it is being interfered with changes, in terms of the Mitchell appointment and the Bunce appointment. I'd like to think it's not been. I think, if I'm honest, for me, Mark, I think a lot of these players have reached that tipping point. I think that, that kind of injection of belief and confidence and intensities, identity, that kind of a thing. A lot of these players almost just ran on pure adrenaline for a period of time. And I think they've kind of come to that point of that's them done. They've given everything that they can give. And as you said about Sean, there is no other levels above what we've seen. So because the rest of the Premier League teams have strengthened, the quality's gone up in the different teams, people have kind of figured us out a little bit, our 4-3-3, our press and all that stuff. They've kind of figured out our tactics. So it all goes back to Eddie now to do something different and be a little bit more flexible. And I think he struggles with that. He's very, very stubborn in terms of his ethos. And part of me applauds that, and part of me also bangs my head off a desk about it, because I think, why are you just doing the same shit, same tactics with the same group of players, and then you change the player but you keep the same tactics even though the tactics aren't working? So there is definitely, he has to take some responsibility for that. But I think also the club has managed the PSR FFP fiasco appallingly. I think they've hung on to players way longer than they should have done, in the shape of Callum Wilson and Miguel Almirón, to name but two. I'd have sold them when we qualified for Champions League and banked as much money as you could for them and reinvested it into the squad. I think the signings this summer have been poor. I think the FFP and PSR restraints have caused an issue with that, but I think scouting could have been better. So yes, the club have to take responsibility, but also Eddie does have to take responsibility for the club or for the players not playing to the level that we've been used to previously. So that's my take. What was yours, Namar?
So a couple of things that I kind of come to is, did Newcastle drop the ball in their pursuit for a new director of football, a new Dan Ashworth? Did it take them too long to get that person in? Yeah. And are they then culpable because it then put them in a really difficult position by not having Paul Mitchell in quick enough to be able to influence the transfer window as much? In my mind, they should have had that deal done if they were going to bring somebody in well before the window. I know it's difficult. It's not always possible, but it seemed to go on for far too long and puts the club and Eddie in a really difficult position by not being able to attack the window in probably the way they would like. I think Eddie's culpable in that, in terms of maybe his stance on who he wants and not deviating from that when it becomes obvious that player is not going to be joining. I think too much emphasis was probably put on Mark Gay if that was the case, that there was no real, well, I'll look elsewhere, because it became apparent really quickly that Parish was never going to really get involved and do a deal. He didn't.
Time waster.
He was pissing everybody around. So is there a little bit of not naivety, but maybe stubbornness in that? I think it was probably the one, is to say, that's the player I want. That's exactly who I've identified will come in and do the job in this side, and that's it. I think there's got to be flexibility there. In terms of playing style, I think we've seen a little bit of shift, but I think there has to be more of a shift game by game, target game. Look at the City game, for example. The way that Newcastle targeted that City game, the way that they changed their tactics specifically for that City game was brilliant. And we sang his praises for it, because I think it was a masterclass of how to combat City. They put players in positions to prevent City being able to play through the lines. They kept an eye completely on Erling Haaland the entire game, didn't give him a sniff. They pushed the ball wide and forced City into areas they didn't want to play in, exactly the same as they've done before to City. I think there has to be more of an emphasis on being able to do that against other sides where, they've got to come out and not just be the same 4-3-3. Let's play the same way. The press is great for some games. It's not for others. The high intensity of play is great for some games and not in others. There has to be a difference. There has to be a change in formation, a change in the way they play. City have done it to Newcastle when they changed the way that they played in the cup game, where they dropped a man deeper to combat Newcastle's midfield press and things. So there has to be fluidity in that, and just in game, man. I think he has to be a little bit more flexible in the way that he manages in game as well. So I think overall, I think both are culpable in terms of the way that the summer has gone, particularly with the transfers, because I do think the club really let one slip in not getting that transfer unit solved a lot more quickly.
And I think that's a great point, mate. I think we're both on the same page with that one. So what's the next one, mate? You want to pull that one up? I'll read this one if you want. give you a rest, mate.
The next one actually
that's
came
an easy
from Twitter.
One. Yeah, short one. It came from Twitter from, is that Massa Mag?
Massa Mag.
Massa Mag. Would KK make a great replacement CEO? Go on, Mark.
I'll take this one first. Simple answer, no.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
I think, as many people would probably agree, I think that there should be a place at Newcastle for
something
exactly
like that
an ambassadorial role. He doesn't have. I don't think he has the business acumen to come in and be a CEO. I'd worry about,
but he's not got the other stuff. Yeah,
I'd worry about him in a position like sporting director, football director, that kind of role. I'm always wary of old managers being part of the setup at the club and being too involved, because I know he's sort of far gone from management, but there's always that, well, if it doesn't work, we can all fall back on that manager. Do you know what I mean? There's always the whole Man U thing, with the fact that Fergie was constantly involved at the club, even though he was no longer manager, was never any good. I don't think that would be a wise move at all. But an ambassadorial role, absolutely, because find a Newcastle fan that doesn't love Kevin Keegan.
Well, you're going to find. Yeah, it'd be one who doesn't understand it. But yeah, Roger's saying Keegan's 73 now, and he seems to be happy with his life as it is. Is he happy, Roger, or does he love it? Love it. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. But I think the Ferguson kind of comparison is a great one, Mark, because Alex Ferguson hangs around Old Trafford like the ghost of Christmas past, and I think for any manager under pressure, hit the spectre of him being in that arena, it just, everybody looks at him as if like, why can't you be back in the dugout? Why can't you be younger again? And it absolutely just, it inadvertently puts pressure on that manager that's in the hot seat even further, because Fergie's there. And I'm not saying he shouldn't be there. He's got every right to be there, but Keegan would be the same, I think, if he was in the board or in the crowd watching the game. But I think the biggest reason that Keegan couldn't be the CEO is he's the most volatile man in the world. One day we just kick off and go, that's it, I've had enough, I'm quitting, I'm off, fuck off. And he'd go by lunchtime, because he's done that before. I love him to bits, and we owe him so much at this football club. And I think the young generation of fans maybe don't appreciate what Keegan did for this club. My suggestion to them is YouTube's a wonderful thing. Go and watch and go and read on the internet about what that man did for this football club. You wouldn't be supporting the club that you are supporting today if that man had not done what he'd done. So we owe him so much. But yeah, in terms of a CEO, no chance. Sensible says he's doing a talking at the Whitney Bay playoffs. I did see that. Apparently, Sensible he is. We might have a little gander for tickets. Me and Mark, I think. For that. Who knows? We might mosey on down and see Super Kev down at the playoffs. There was one that just come in actually from Trevor on the questions was, what is the greatest game you lads ever saw live? Is in James's Park. I was never a season ticket holder. The one that sticks in my mind was 3-2 versus Red in 06-07 season. The winner was a swerving belter from Emery. I remember going to the game where we beat Man U 3-0, and I was behind the goal for Kabai's sexy free kick, which was just, as it went in, I was like, ooh, it's that kind of Gary Neville noise when it went in. It was fucking amazing. So that was a good one. Me and you both been to plenty of games in the past, Mark, even though season tickets were jacked many years ago. Thanks, Mike Ashley. We are going to find you on that P. Diddy list. I'm telling you, we're going to keep looking for you. But yeah, what was your favourite game? Mark?
There's a couple. The Man U one, I think,
it was a great game.
It is one. I mean, it was freaking freezing. It was early January. Was it a Wednesday night?
It was.
It was
4th of Jan, I think it was.
Baldock.
Just looked. But remember the chant as well. Remember the chant, the best chant I've ever heard, the Wayne Rooney chant. Do you remember it? I remember it so well. I've got a good memory for shit like that. So
I can't remember.
I remember it. I remember it word for word. So all Newcastle fans in the Gallagher were singing, Rooney is a wanker. He wears a wonder bra. And when Colin's shagging Rooney, she's thinking of Demba Ba or something like that. On those lines, and it was just, I think Demba Ba was even laughing, listening to the chat. It was, and then he scored that volley as well, which was
that one has slipped my mind. But no, that was a terrific night. I think my only experience of a time we had derby was that season as well, which was finished. It was 1-1, and the atmosphere in that ground for that game was something that I hadn't experienced before in St James's Park. So. I'd never been lucky enough to go to one before. But I think for pure entertainment value, if you go back 90s, was the season Newcastle beat Villa 4-3.
Oh, yes.
And that was
your hat-trick.
Fucking
bonkers.
I
remember that game.
Absolutely bonkers. Villa had a player sent off. Dwight York scored a hat-trick. He had one disallowed. Shearer, Ferdinand. It was just
Wobbly, I think, got on a score sheet. It was loads.
Phenomenal game of football. That was, you wanted a pure advert for the Premier League at that time. That was just, it was crackers. It was so much fun. And the fact that about 6 or 7 rows in front of us were a couple of Borough supporters that decided halfway through the game to take their coats off and have their Borough shirts on. Swiftly got thrown out. But yeah, that was a fun night of football. But I think for the most recent one, I think that Man U game it's one of those cold nights where you just warm up just by watching the football. It was just brilliant.
It's sensational. I remember that Leicester game as well in the Dalglish year of the 4-3 when Sheeran took the back of the goal out, that free kick when he got his hat-trick. And that's probably the best game in the Dalglish era, to be fair, alongside the second 4-3 with Liverpool as well. So those two games spring to mind. But is there any more questions in the Ask the Guy?
There was one, I think, that I pulled up earlier on. It was from Roger. There we go.
Let's have a look at this. So, is the return to high intensity already, even though it's been a big miss, having injury effects? Now, that's interesting. Now, let me take this one first, Mark. I think I said this even when we were doing well, even when we finished top 4, Mark. I kept saying it. Then, if you keep running these players into the ground, they are going to break, they are going to bend, they are going to snap, especially when they're in their 30s and they're not spring chickens anymore. It's okay doing it with Anthony Gordon and maybe Lewis Miley and Lewis Hall, Tino Livramento, young players like that, but even they've had their injuries. But remember when he was playing Burn and Trippier week in, week out when we had the Champions League, and you were like, why are you playing the same 2 guys who are in their 30s week in, week out? Why aren't you resting players? And I do think that's been an issue for Eddie, that Eddie has to have this trust in a player, and I get it. I totally get it. But I think he really struggles to use the squad depth, certainly when he was playing with the level of intensity that he has now. The intensity's been dialed down. Now, whether we've been figured out or whether he's just thought, I can't keep running these guys as hard and as long as I can or they're going to break, which is what happened the season before when everyone was injured. But something in the manager's mind has to change. I mean, there's that joke, isn't it? The Toon Review guys call it Eddie o'clock, where he just makes the subs the same time every single game. There doesn't seem to be any kind of, spontaneity in the substitutions. But I do think squad usage is something that Howe, and he's still a young manager, he's still a developing manager. People forget that sometimes. He's only had, a handful of jobs in football, and he's got better every time he's had those jobs, including the job with us. But he is a young manager who's learning and developing his trade. But one of the things he really has to learn, Mark, is the use of a squad, in my opinion, because I think he really struggles with it.
Yeah, I mean, the examples I always go back to, and I sound like a broken record, but
I know where you're going. I know exactly where you're going because you say it all the time.
It's the Everton game, 3-0 down. Why have you waited until the 90th minute to make substitutions that aren't going to impact the game? Get the players off, get them a rest, and move on. And the PSG game, leaving Alexander Isak on when he can barely walk is, and I know it was kids on the bench, and do you really trust him in that? But Isak was useless.
Louis Miley was doing it. Louis Miley was doing the job on the pitch at 17. So why not give somebody else a shot?
I mean, bless Isak, he stayed and he battled on, but he couldn't walk. He couldn't run. I mean, there's no way he could have even run for the last 20 minutes. The lack of use of the squad at times is absolutely baffling. But he has shown a willingness to change things earlier this season. We've seen substitutions early doors, and I know he likes his 60-odd minutes substitution, but we've seen switches at halftime and things. So maybe there's a little bit of movement there with him, but he has to manage in game better. I said that before. He has to grow there. He has to be able to look at things. And if it's not working after 25 minutes and things are going spectacularly wrong, you've got to be able to switch things up and change your style, change your player, change your formation, do something to affect the game, and not simply just wait for something to happen, make something happen. I think that's the biggest thing I would say for him at the moment.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing as well. I know he's got cult status with the fan base, but for the love of Christ, hire a set-piece coach and get Mad Dog off the fucking set pieces, because they are toilet. These little shitty short corners that turn into nothing are dreadful. Either just whip the fucking ball in the box to your 6'7" centre-half and let him get his nut on it, or get somebody in who can be more imaginative than what we're seeing, because they are dross, Mark. They are dross.
I think that there has to be a bit of inventiveness there, and I don't think there's an awful lot. The trouble is, if you put the ball in the box for Dan Burn to get his head on, he doesn't get his head on it, which is part of the problem.
6'7" and jumps 5'3".
It was always my criticism of Peter Crouch, wasn't it? He was that tall, but he jumped down. He always ducked when he was jumping for the ball. So he ended up lower than he'd started. Infuriated. Dan Burn's a little bit like that. I do think he struggles at times to read the flight of the ball, especially from corners. You want him just to be an absolute bulldozer in that box, don't you? Stick a ball in, he goes and gets his head on it. Job done, 1-0. It's frustrating watching that at times. I do think they've got to be a little bit more inventive and come up with something. And I think a set piece coach, we've seen the way that it's worked with other clubs. Arsenal one, Villa another, where dedicate. I mean, how much flipping praises? What's the long-haired fella called? Austin McPhee at Villa, who he stood on the edge of the technical area, barking orders for the corners and things like that. The same at Arsenal with their set piece coach. That's an area where people scoffed at it, and it's becoming more and more of a thing, and it's been proved that it works. It doesn't always, but having one is better than not, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of the Americanisms that are coming into the game. I mean, don't get me started on halftime interviews with fucking assistant managers and bollocks like that the Premier League are talking about. But the whole set piece thing was very NFL-y, you know. But you're right, the opportunities to score from set pieces are so valuable that you can't squander them, and you can't sort of squander them time and time again, Mark. So I agree. It could be something the club should look at. One more for this before we move on Out of Tune. Roger said, is there an ITK shite, in brackets, well said, Roger, account that we're ready to sell Mickey in January is what he was talking about earlier on. We did see this, we had a look at this. So it was the Football Insider, I think, which is like a bunch of stone students I've got ran out of Doritos and decided to do a story about Miguel Almirón, I think, mate. Basically, isn't it?
I found it. It was a tweet by an X account called Sports Analyst, who have 95 followers. So read into that what you will. They posted saying that Newcastle reportedly set to accept an offer for Miguel Almirón in January as they aim to reinvest in the squad. With limited appearances this season, Almiron's exit could pave the way for a new right-wing signing. Could Leroy Sané be on the horizon? and they've used a Football Insider image underneath, or they've made one up, or whatever. I haven't actually seen it from there. And then a couple of days ago, there was a post from, is it Mark Douglas from who'd put Newcastle will not sanction a cut price deal for Miguel Almirón. So read into that what you will.
Hang on, Ian's back with his transfer valuation. He's better than this guy on Sky Sports. What's that twat on Sky Sports called? It Keegan? What's he called? That fucking arrogant prick. What is he called?
Solikol.
Yeah, the one that said Newcastle were going to make fake sponsor deals. That fucking arsehole. Ian's better than him. Get Ian on with his packet of super noodles and 5 million for Miguel Almirón. I'll buy that for $1. I think the thing is with Miguel Almirón, somebody will buy him. And it will be somebody.
Cover.
Thank you very much.
That's it.
Cover,
Thank
that's it. Prick is what I'll call him from now on. That's easy to remember. But somebody will buy.
Careful, you'll have Jim White after you. You'll have the boys after you.
Jim White's reformed now. He's like, to be fair, Jim White's a lot calmer now these days. Him and Simon Jordan were all talking about how PSR and FFP isn't fair to Newcastle, so they've changed that tune very much, so which is good. But yeah, going back to Miguel Almirón, somebody will buy him. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It won't be a top European side. It'll be someone from the MLS. It'll be, La Cucaracha FC from fucking the back end of Mexico or some bollocks like that. They'll buy him for 4 packets of fucking beans or something like that. Because we ain't going to get the money back for him. We're not going to get 20 million we shelled out for him because he's pissed. He's pissed.
Apologies to anybody watching in Mexico right now.
Yeah, apologies. Lo siento to anyone in Mexico who was offended by that. I love you. But I don't love Miguel Almirón because he's shit. To be fair, he's fucking dreadful. You like that bit of Spanish on Evermore tonight, ladies?
Oh, well done. I'm just thinking we're going to be as targeted by the Mexicans as Top Gear was when Hammond had a go at one of their cars. So. No.
Well, to be fair, Christ Almighty, don't get me started on those 3 Winnets. I know you like them, but fuck me. If Jeremy Clarkson goes in the jungle, I'd just put the big bastard in a tank with a crocodile and do everybody a favor and eat that motherfucker up because he is prime Bellend. Prime Bellend is what he is. I'm not a fan. Trevor saying deadline day on Sky Sports is a better watch, but it really, really is. As soon as Jim White back in the day clocked, he had an ironic, they decked this place out with yellow. Yeah, Easter Fair, they did. They really, really did. Kendo was enjoying the Mexican, I think, to be fair, is what that is. And Rogers giving me a clap. I don't know if that's because I called Clarkson a bell end, but yeah, he certainly is. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Miguel Almirón, but one thing's for sure, he's not good enough. He runs around all day and, he's getting to the point now where it's like that Friends episode, isn't it? Good job, little buddy. He does like a forward pass. And I hear content creators who I like as well, and I watch and I like what they do. And they go like, oh, Mickey did well. You're like, no, guys, he's still shit. 1 yard, he missed from 1 yard against AC Milan in the Champions League. Come on. That's completely and utterly unforgivable, man. Completely unforgivable. You can't tell me that, mate.
I still can't get my head round how you miss.
How did he miss?
I just don't understand it. I really just don't understand it.
It was harder to miss than it really was.
But Baz in the comments, I'm sorry, looked okay against Wimbledon. It's Wimbledon.
It's Wimbledon, mate. It's Wimbledon.
And I think you have to just look at what level you've. And nobody looked really, really good that night.
No.
It was a lot of pass, but nothing to sort of get at the end of it. And he fair enough. Sorry, Baz.
Yeah.
I went too soon.
It's sarcasm. Well said, Baz. Well done. It's hard to determine in the comments, Baz. We haven't got the sarcasm filter on. Well played.
I know. If you could do that for us in future, just put it in brackets for me because then I know afterwards. So sorry. We've said it, and we said it at the end of that season where he had that huge purple patch. It ain't going to last.
Should have flogged him.
It isn't going to last.
If you wanted your money back on him, that was the time to sell him, and they didn't do it.
More than that, we knew. I think we could all see that patch was never going to happen again. It was never going to continue.
I said he'll never have the same season. And PK was on the channel at the time. I said to PK, he will never have that season again, and he hasn't had that season again, and he will never have that season again. He didn't even do that in the fucking MLS, for God's sake. Where he was playing against
And
a bunch of fucking plumbers and tilers. You know what I mean? At that particular time.
Yeah, and he's 30 now, so he's not going to improve. He now will be on the decline from the level that he was at. So look, I think that the time to move on from Miggy, and you say thank you for what he's done, because I think he's been a good part of the club for 6 years. But the time's moved on from players like him being in the side, and it just has to be more that's available for particularly in that position.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, going from a player who isn't progressing to a player who is progressing, and that is our young left back, Lewis Hall. So Lewis Hall put in a good shift for the under-21s the other night. This was just some of the stats that come up. Courtesy of Geordie Josh. We'll give Geordie Josh a shout out for that. So he had 96 minutes played for Lewis Hall, 93 touches, 65 out of 69 accurate passes. That's a passing rate of 94%. 4 tackles, even though people say he can't tackle. 2 out of 2 accurate long balls, 3 out of 4 successful dribbles, and 1 big chance created. And when you're watching England's first team playing right backs at left backs, this kid is doing everything he has to do, Mark, isn't he, in an England shirt, but also in a Newcastle shirt. I'm loving the progress of Lewis Hall. Some people keep writing him off. I don't know why. He's a young lad. He's going to make mistakes. He tries to make dangerous passes, maybe sometimes when he shouldn't. But for me, I'm very happy with Lewis Hall's progress, and I think we've got a good player on our hands there, mate.
Definitely, and that's 2 out of 3 really, really top performances at that level, and you can make the argument that it's the under-21s that the level he's from, but he's learning, and it's more time, and it's playing with good players around him as well. That 21 side is full of good quality players. The likes of McAtee, we'll come to in a second. The likes of Morgan Rogers in that side as well, and so he's learning his game, and he's becoming a really integral part of that side. And I think that only goes to help Newcastle, and he becomes I just think he goes exactly that. I think progress, that's the key, and he looks like game in, game out, he is progressing and getting better.
Who's progressing better in your opinion, him or Tino? Who at the minute is progressing better?
At the moment, I think Tino's sort of plateaued a bit. I think he has dropped off in terms of his level of performance. But I mean, you probably see that. You'll see little jumps from each of them. I think Tino needs probably a good run, and hampered, I think, at the fact that obviously, he has a bad moment and Trippier comes in and he's taken out of that. I think he probably needs a few games where he goes and maybe drops down a level just for a game and go and get a little bit of confidence up, go and get some proper game minutes under his belt. There's an exceptional fullback in there. We've seen that. I just think a bit of confidence in there will do him the world of good. But I certainly think at the moment, you've seen more progression from Hall. But I think we saw an awful lot of progression from Tino last season, where we probably didn't see the same progression from Hall to start with. So we'll probably see it move like that.
Absolutely, mate, absolutely. But yeah, long may it continue. I mean, if those two keep progressing the way they are, then, I think, as Graham said in the comments there before, we'll start to say maybe that window wasn't as disastrous as we thought. So moving on to Out of Toon to wrap the show up, guys. Got a few things to cover. I'm starting off on a really sad note as well. Obviously, we all saw the really sad news about George Baldock, who sadly passed away at no age of 31 before England played Greece, and there was a real touching tribute to him. Obviously, I think Greece players really put it in as well for that particular night, and also in that under-21s game as well was James McAtee, who obviously played with him for Sheffield United. I think very talented player himself, James McAtee. Really progressing well. But when he scored, he pulled up his shirt there, Mark, to say obviously GB2, rest easy, brother. And that was really lovely of him to do. But just so sad, mate, isn't it? 31 years old. He was off playing for Panathinaikos, which we'll come on to in a second because they've done something unbelievable. But just really tragic, mate, isn't it? 31 years old. There's no age to go, man.
I mean, it's just horrible, isn't it? And I mean, the tributes were really, really nice. I thought the Greeks did it brilliant during the game. Obviously, with the goals and stuff, they really did a really good job in that tribute for him, and it's just, yeah. I mean, it's another one of those where it is just awful. And as a guy I know works as an analyst, and he's worked with him, and he says him.
With George, you worked with George,
yeah,
did he?
and he says he's just a lovely lad.
People said that, yeah, I've heard that. He was a really lovely fellow as well, which is it's even more tragic, isn't it? Really, I mean, you hear
it's
that
just
as well.
your brain sometimes just can't compute it, and especially for somebody that's that young and that fit and healthy and
have it all. Yeah, it's a real shame.
And it's those players that it's funny, isn't it? Because you kind of look at players that have maybe finished playing and moved on to other things, and it's maybe not so much of a shock, even if they are still too young. But a player that's still at that age, that is still in that position to be able to play, and you're just not expecting it at all, and it's just horrible, man.
It's not even that, Mark. It's a young man, and
a young family as well.
Exactly, husband, father, somebody's son, somebody's brother. He's younger man than you and I as well. It's so scary. It shakes your mortality to the core, really, and it's so tragic. Obviously, whatever it means, our thoughts, and I'm sure everyone who watches Evermore's thoughts are with George Baldock's family. But something has happened which has blown my mind, really, and I think you said this, Mark. But, when tragedy strikes, football just seems to get their shit firmly together. And Panathinaikos have obviously had this story come out. We took this from Football Storycast, and they said Panathinaikos have decided to pay the entire amount of George Baldock's 3-year contract to his wife to help raise their 1-year-old child. And there's also a charity match for the Baldock family in 2025 planned to bring in additional income for the child. That is fucking spectacular by Panathinaikos in a world where people, companies, employers can be cold and callous, even in the face of a bereavement. For a football club to turn around and do that, Mark, is fucking amazing. And I say hats off to Panathinaikos. Well played.
Yeah, I think that you find with companies that have. I'm not going to try and denigrate what they've done. There are many companies that will have things like the death and service.
Yeah, absolutely, stuff like
that. Yeah. But I think to fully pay, and most of those won't be a fully paid up contract. And I think it's just such a wonderful thing to say. Look, it says we'll pay the contract up for the full amount of time. I think if football gets it right. At times, we've seen football get it spectacularly wrong for things, but I think that just the gesture of it, I think, is just it's football going. Look, we'll look after her. We'll look after her, and it doesn't always happen. And I know it should happen more, but it is nice to see that for once, football's got it right.
Absolutely, and yeah, brilliant job from Panathinaikos. They're absolutely superb. So moving on to again, when football sometimes gives you moments that are just downright hilarious. We just talked about tragic moments there with George Baldock, but thankfully you can always rely on the Irish to pick up your spirits from talking about something that's sad to something that's absolutely fucking hilarious. Now, this is the Irish fans, if you didn't see this already. So the Irish fans have got Sky sponsoring their shirts, which I think a lot of the Irish fans aren't particularly too keen on. So cue these absolute legend Irish fans who got their Irish shirt rebranded with Fire Stick and Dodgy Box when they were going to see Ireland play in the latest international break. Mate, hats off to those guys. That's absolutely fucking brilliant. Well played.
Football banter at its very best. This comes back to, and I've said it before, the wit of a football fan isn't beaten by an awful lot, is it? I mean, that is just brilliant. Well done, because that's quick off the mark to go. You've got it right, absolutely right, and it's hilarious. I love it. Well done,
mate. I tell you what, I've spent a bit of time over there with work, and the crack is absolutely brilliant. So I'm not even surprised.
Shame your accent isn't.
Well, they call it the crack. They call it the crack. Let's hear yours, mate. Let's hear yours, buddy lad.
No, you're right.
Yeah, you go.
I'll quite happily say my accents aren't very good.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Only Steve Bruce ones. Only Steve Bruce. I'll tell you what else was really good as well. Was this thing we saw on Twitter? Was the Senegal team's hazing of their new fitness coach, where I think they told him to do some kind of weird tribal dance or something like that, and it was just a complete fucking wind up. And he really went for it, didn't he? I mean,
he did.
Play. He threw his all into it, and the Senegal team could not contain their laughter. Probably I think it was about 20 seconds in or something, and they all just erupted into fits of hysterics. And fair play to him, he took it well as well, Mark, didn't he? So.
Get involved, get it done. Whether you're doing the singing, whether you're doing the dancing, just be part of it. You endear yourself to the ground. It was hilarious, and the fact that they're all killing themselves laughing about it's just brilliant. It's a brilliant thing. If you haven't watched it, go and find it, go and watch it. It is fantastic fun.
Absolutely brilliant. I tell you, somebody who wasn't laughing was Arsenal Football Club, when apparently they got really nervous at this particular moment, which was fucking hilarious. So Conor McGregor, who is obviously the personification of calm and never does anything crazy in the heat of the moment at all, they thought it was a great idea for him to have a bit of alone time with Saka prior to a Champions League game, I think this was. And he decided to kind of pretend to spar with Saka and throw some punches and kicks at him. And he almost at one point nearly threw him to the deck. And apparently this has led Arsenal to investigate, the access to their players prior to the game. Saka did come out obviously and say, no harm done, just a friendly spark. I mean, Saka's a lovely kid, isn't he? He's got a really nice way about him, but I mean, that is just fucking stupid, isn't it? Really, by whoever's agreed that altercation before the game.
I think the funniest thing at the back of this is now Saka's gone off from England from having been injured and now potentially out. So you've got to be careful in those moments, but. I mean, he's not the most calm of people, is he, to get involved in doing things like that? It's maybe somebody you don't want throwing around your star players.
Yeah, not particularly a clever move, that. So I think somebody would have got their arse chewed out for that. I'm pretty confident about that. You put fucking who in front of them before a Champions League game, you stupid twat. I can imagine was the conversation in the boardroom at some level. But so, funny enough, another international break and another record smashed by Erling Haaland, which was unbelievable. I mean, we're running out of superlatives really for this absolute machine. I mean, this is the week where we saw Elon Musk launch robots into the world. There's already a robot and he's scoring goals by the fucking boatload, and his name is Erling Haaland. So Erling Haaland, at 24 years old, is now Norway's joint all-time top goal scorer with 32 goals in 36 matches. Now, put that into context. He's not playing for Manchester City there, Mark. He's playing for Norway, and he scored 32 goals in 36 matches. I mean, that's like FIFA cheat code shit, isn't it? Like, what is going on? This guy is unbelievable, man.
Can I scare you some more? Actually, that's an old picture. I've actually got it right. Well,
no,
that was the one that did post. Yeah, it's 34 and 37 now. So he's got another two since that was taken. So, I mean,
one job to do, you. That's just you getting me back for saying your accent's been very good. Thank you for the super chat, Dan. Appreciate that.
Thank you, mate.
So you've got more goals than that.
He's just unreal. What is it? It's 15 in 14 Nations League games, 8 in 9 friendlies, 6 in 8 qualifiers, and 5 European qualifiers, and 5 in 6 World Cup qualifiers. I mean, you run out of things to say about him because he's scoring at more than a goal a game for Norway in terms of his minutes played. The man is just. I'd say again in the most loving way possible. The man is a freak, and he is just unreal in front of goal. Just mental. The numbers are just going to get better and better and better, or worse and worse, depending on where you're looking at it. I guess if you're an opposition coach, defender.
Exactly. I mean, Haaland is definitely on his way to being one of the greatest players of all time. And speaking of one of the greatest players of all time, he had a blinder this week. So I think Cristiano Ronaldo was omitted from, I think it was it Cansado, I think it was Old Italian Internationals list or something like that, where he basically listed players, and he said that Cristiano Ronaldo did not get into his list of the best players of all time. So this was Ronaldo's rebuttal, because obviously he's, as a 40-odd-year-old man, he still can't stand the fact that people don't want him in their list, rather than just shrugging their shoulders, not giving a fuck. He said, I respect everyone's preferences, but I've never seen anyone better than me. No footballer can do the things I can. There's no player, I repeat, no player more complete than me. I play well with both feet. I'm quick, powerful, good with the head. I score goals. I make assists. There are guys who prefer Neymar or Messi, but I tell you, there's no one more complete than me. So as soon as you saw that really humble statement from the ever kind of shy Cristiano Ronaldo, Mark, what was the first two letters, or one letter and one number you said to me when you read that?
R9.
Thank you very much.
I'm happy to die on this hill completely. R9 is the best footballer I have seen in my lifetime. He was unreal. And he was quick. He was powerful. He was good in the air. He could use both feet, and he was skillful. He could do all of what Ronaldo done. What held him back was his injuries, and possibly the fact that he was a little bit of a nut job. But he was far and away the best footballer I've seen in my lifetime. And look, you can have another opinion, and that's fine. But yeah, I'm sorry. There's some humility there from Cristiano, isn't there? Jesus.
I'm not being funny. There also happens to be a little fella from Argentina who is very decent, and he's
Maradona.
No, not him. The other one. So there's two of them. He's called Lionel Messi, and he happens to be arguably the greatest player that's ever lived. In many people's eyes, even some of the greatest players on lists that you didn't make, Cristiano, say that Lionel Messi is the best player that ever lived. But going back to R9, Mark, all that stuff R9 did, he was out partying with blooming, senoritas and margaritas till 3 a.m, and he was up doing it the next day, scoring hat-tricks, with a kite hanging over his shorts and his man boobs wobbling. He was still fucking brilliant. He wasn't sucking souls of small children and drinking some kind of fucking herbal mixture from a witch doctor in his mansion, his soulless mansion, and not drinking Coca-Cola and pissing on everybody's chips. He wasn't doing all that shit, Cristiano Ronaldo, and he was still better than you. So have a bit of that, you bastard. Have a bit of
Amen.
that.
Amen.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. But somebody who isn't enjoying a good spell at the moment, even though he was brilliant, is Jurgen Klopp. So Jurgen Klopp's former clubs are a bit annoyed with Jurgen Klopp. So this is apparently what Jurgen Klopp said in 2017. I'm a football romantic. I like tradition in football and all that stuff. I don't like the multi-club ownerships, and I wouldn't want to have anything like that. And then Klopp in 2024, as he's just taken a new job on, I'm a big supporter of Red Bull's football operation. Their multi-club ownership model is something I cannot wait to get started with. One word, hypocrite, is what people are throwing at Jurgen Klopp. Now, you know me, Mark. I don't like to criticize Jurgen Klopp. I've never done that on this channel at all. Not one bit.
Biggest fan.
Yeah, of course I am. But I always said to you, Jurgen Klopp would always come back and take a big job like a Barca or Real Madrid or something like that. He's not done that. He's taken this kind of strange job of overseeing all of football development in all of the kind of the Red Bull clubs. He's not technically a manager, but Dortmund in particular have got really pissy with this. I don't think Liverpool have been too bothered about it. There's been some little murmurs, some Scousers moaning, but that's no surprise there. But Dortmund fans generally are really devastated by this. Do you see the problem with it? Do you think Jurgen Klopp's looking like a bit of a hypocrite here?
I'm not entirely sure that comment was right from the site that put it up. I think they've changed the words somewhat
edited it
to kind of suit their narrative.
Creative
but I kind of
editing.
get it, because he has gone, and all you need to kind of look at is how hated are Red Bull in German football. Most German
people think they're just
fans,
a soulless club, corporate animal, aren't they? They're not. There's no tradition there.
They are despised by an awful lot of German football fans. Not all of them.
Germany's very proud of that tradition, aren't they? For Gladbach and Dortmund and teams like that. Stuttgart. They're very much like that.
And it goes against the philosophy of fan ownership of clubs, or partial fan ownership of clubs as well, because I think that Red Bull got around that. And it does, when you call yourself a football romantic and you go into something like that, and I can kind of understand why they've sort of embellished what he said. I think the actual quote was about being a football romantic and only 2 teams in Germany sing "You'll Never Walk Alone" as teams are coming out. But I kind of get it, because if you're going to call yourself a football romantic and then you go into that particular situation, then it's going to get thrown at you, because it's just that the way that they operate. And some people do like the model. I think Leeds somewhat involved with Red Bull. I think Red Bull might have a stake in them, not particularly large, but
there's some kind of bit there, yeah.
And I think they're rumored to be. Are they going to take over Paris FC as well, with plans to have a stadium directly opposite the Parc des Princes, which could be fun. So I mean, it's a huge operation. It's a huge footballing machine now, and it does grate a little bit. If you're going to call yourself a football purist and a football romantic, to go into that, it does strike me as wrong.
That is a little bit. Opinion. I think Baz was saying that's what's his name old job. I think he means Paul Mitchell's old job. He did work for the Red Bull crew, didn't he? For a period of time, but he did. I mean, from brilliant managers though to shit managers, no better word really to describe this miserable bastard, which is Graham Souness, who is an absolute failure of a football manager in many ways. Yes, Rangers, Liverpool aside, I suppose. Shite manager for the rest of his career. Now, he was doing a podcast with Simon Jordan and Troy Deeney. That's the caliber of people that were on this podcast. So that tells you it's obviously the elite of the footballing world, owners and strikers alike. So why not bring in a brilliant manager like Graham Souness? And he turned around and said something which was utterly laughable. And I think I posted it on our X account and just said, if anybody wants any vindication as to how much shit Graham Souness talks, this sentence is it. So I'm going to read this back, Mark. Just brace yourself for this. Wenger was not a football man. He was very lucky, said Souness. So he's basically criticising Arsene Wenger, saying he wasn't a particularly good manager. I mean, that is the most ridiculous bullshit I've ever heard from a sour, bitter little man who, as a player, went around chopping people in half. Yes, was a decent player, but as a manager, I wouldn't trust him to manage the local Blockbuster Video. A thick twat would lose all the videotapes, probably. But fucking Arsene Wenger was one of the most transformative managers of the modern day game. He changed everything when he came to Premier League: nutrition, fitness, sports psychology. He is a huge contributor to the modern day game now. And this prick has turned around and said that. I mean, what? Honestly, there's no better way to describe him than that, isn't there?
Well, I called the little pop-up on the side, so the little overlay, I called it sour-faced twat. I mean, that suits him down to the ground. So, yeah, it seems to be the word of choice from him. I mean, you look at the job that Wenger did.
Sorry, Mark, we'll get him off. Mark's just saying, what's he doing on your show? We'll get him off. Sorry, Mark, he's upset.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark.
Special guest, this sour-faced twat.
Yeah, it's this sour-faced bastard, yeah.
Wow.
Where do you start with
what did he say? Because he talked about how he was extraordinarily lucky that he inherited a world-class back five at Arsenal, and he just happened to be around when the French had their best period of the number of players, or
dominance.
The best sort of squad depth that they had for the French side. Let's not forget, Thierry Henry had gone to Juventus and been pretty poor overall. He'd not been terrible, but he wasn't a centre forward at Juventus when he went there.
No, he's a winger.
And
not a very good one.
He was brought in for about 10 million and became the best player in the world under Arsene Wenger. So let's not forget that although Thierry Henry was special, that it was under Wenger's tutelage that he became that special player. And Bergkamp was coached into being the player that he was. He was already exceptional when he'd come from Inter. But the levels he then took on, and you look at others that came in and just how good
Petit, list them off, mate. Overmars.
But he brought them in and put them in that environment to succeed, and gave them the environment to do it. And it wasn't just he inherited that sort of backline, but then it went on, and he developed others, and he brought other players in to play in those roles. I mean, you don't win what he's won without being a football man, and he was so it's like, but you don't win what you win like that without being a football man. And I know he'd come from relative nobody state when he was in Japan and stuff, but he was an exceptional football coach.
You listen to Ian Wright talk about it. You know, again, what Trevor's saying there, everything we're saying there, you know, the formation, the diet, the attitude, everything else. And Souness is just, again, he is a failure. But you listen to what Ian Wright said, even Gary Neville said, they used to still go out drinking, the Manchester United players, and they couldn't believe how fit the Arsenal players were. They were like machines, and they were saying, shit, we need to change the way we do things. So, you know, let's not forget, even that bullshit comment about a defence, Mark, Wenger rebuilt that entire back four to the Invincibles back four of Lauren, Colo Touré, Sol Campbell, Ashley Cole. You know, he rebuilt that entire back four into an unbelievable back four. And that midfield two in front in Emmanuel Petit and Vieira, he signed them both, and he made them both the players that they were, you know, as well as all the other players, you know, you say Henri and Elka and
Overmars and
Overmars,
Freddie Lundberg as well.
Freddie Lundberg, all these players. So the fact that Souness says that is utter fucking bullshit. But when you hear people like Ferguson talk about Wenger, you hear people like, you know, Gary Neville talking about Wenger, you know, proper football people, they know the guy was a genius, you know. So that is just pure petty shit clickbait bollocks to me in that podcast, and it doesn't surprise me, because Simon Jordan loves a bit of that, you know, dangle a carrot and get people like us moaning about it, you know, and then they get people go to check out what he said, probably. But utter fucking bullshit, in my opinion. And if that's the level of expertise you have, Souness, then just go back to retirement, you miserable bastard. Going on a couple of other points. This is a good one from Reece James. Excuse me, I had a little cough there. So apparently Reece James is exploring the possibility with his representatives of joining Barcelona or Benfica for health reasons. Now, as soon as I've seen this, I thought of the Bernie Mac scene in Ocean's 11 when they say Frank C's relocating for health reasons. He goes to Vegas to be a car dealer. I don't know if Reece James is going to be part of an elite team of bank robbers, but I mean, as a Chelsea fan, you'd be pretty pissed off about this. He was given the captain's armband. He's then been snapped every way since Sunday, ever since he's had it. Probably the weight of the armband has strained the ligaments in his arm potentially. But I mean, if he fucked off to go abroad, you'd be really annoyed as a Chelsea fan, wouldn't you?
I think if he was part of an elite team of bank robbers or thieves like he was, that he'd constantly have the Clooney and Pitt going, do you think we need one more? Because he's always fucking injured. So I sort of get it, because he struggled so badly with injuries.
Premier League's too fast paced, do you think, for his body?
Is the tempo too much for him now? And he's not exactly old, but does he?
Sorry, that comment's fucking brilliant. He does make Callum Wilson look like RoboCop. Brilliant, brilliant.
I mean, we gave that. But go back to the 90s again. How much shit did Darren Anderton get for being sick? No, this guy's far beyond that.
People still put him in their England teams. I've seen. I think you're taking a piss.
Well, there was a tweet earlier on about what's stopping this England team from winning the World Cup or something, and it had Reece James and Mason Mount in it. Well, there's two names straight away that's preventing them from winning the fucking World Cup. I mean, for fuck's sake. But I sort of get it, because maybe it's the slightly slower pace football, the climate, the diet, that sort of thing. He might be better suited to play out there, and the absolute, you know, sort of thunder of the Premier League, when you see the tempo at times. Maybe it is too much for him, and he needs to just take the foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, mate, absolutely. But I think they'd be deeply annoyed if it happened. So we've got one more for Out of Toon before it's Betty by time, guys. And this is a bit of an annoying one for me. So I don't know whether we were linked to this guy. Obviously, former Newcastle player. One wasn't great at Newcastle, but again, injuries kind of got a hold of him as well. But Manchester City, their new director of football is none other than Hugo Viana, who played for us. He's left or he will leave his job at Sporting Lisbon to replace. I can't even read that. Is it? What's that name, Mark? Is it Tiki
Bergistan? Bergistan. Oh, it's late.
It's very late. It's a long day. Yeah. So yeah, obviously Hugo Viana is very highly rated in that role with Manchester City. Where the fuck were we? Former Newcastle player. Where were we getting a guy like that?
Maybe it's just availability at the time. I don't know, but that goes back to what I said before. I do think that and again, when you look at Newcastle's pursuit of a sporting director of football, was too much thrown into the Dougie Friedman ring, and that's obviously ultimately pissed off Parish. But I just think it took too long. Maybe they should have cast the net a little bit wider. If Paul Mitchell was the ideal candidate, why was that not done more quickly? But look, I mean, he's got some big shoes to fill at City, hasn't he? Because I mean, the guy whose name I'm not going to begin to try and pronounce again at 5 to 11 at night because I'm tired and I haven't had enough coffee today. He's done a great job with recruitment and things, and bringing in players for them to then sell on at profit and being able to negotiate. I mean, let's not forget these are the same people that negotiated a freaking deal for 50 million for Erling Haaland. I mean, that might be the bargain of forever. I mean, where else are you going to buy a striker like that for 50 million? It's just unreal. So he's got some big shoes to fill, Viana. And good luck to him. And it is odd, isn't it, when you think to play, and sometimes you find that, isn't it, the players that maybe don't hit the highest levels as a player go on to become something special in the background.
Absolutely.
Actually, Wenger was one of those. Let's go back to Wenger. Wenger was one of those. He wasn't a great player.
And Klopp as well. And those two,
exactly.
Absolutely. And look what they've done. But that's a good way to end it, Mark. So we've been on for a long time tonight, but it's been really enjoyable as always, guys. Thank you so much to all of the comments, the questions. Really helps the episode flow. We always appreciate it. If this is the kind of thing you like, you are checking us out for the first time, smash that button, subscribe. Help get us to that 9K subscriber mark, and you can win this lovely retro blue shirt. Not the one I'm wearing, a fresh one that's all tucked away somewhere. Don't worry, it won't smell of my BO or anything like that. Even though I don't smell, by the way. I do wash and wear deodorant and everything, so don't worry about that. So yeah, it'll be a nice fresh one for you, don't worry. But yeah, smash that button, help get us to 9K. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back with a match preview for the upcoming game this weekend, Brighton, which I'm shitting my pants about the prospect of Yankuba Minter skinning Lewis Hall at left back. Sorry, Lewis. And we will come back for the post-match as well, straight after the game. So keep it evermore, guys. Have a belter of a week, and we'll see you very soon.
Take care, everyone. See you.
Take